Last month, I was on a train to Davos for the Polkadot events at the World Economic Forum. On the way, I began talking to a woman, a senior executive at a Fortune 500 company. She had been to 6 Davoses. So I asked, what keeps you coming back? And what is the agenda for a corporate insider at Davos? She replied, we're here to talk about ESG, environmental and social governance. Shocked at the coincidence and thinking, is this woman trolling me? I said, get out. To which she replied, seriously, we talk about ESG at every board meeting. It affects everything that we do, from supply chain to transportation, regulation, and how we communicate to our customers. ESG isn't just part of our strategy. ESG is our future strategy. I'm Adam, CEO of Bitgreen. For the last year, our team has been building an application-specific parachain specifically targeted towards sustainability, corporate ESG, and compliant green financings on blockchain. Today, I'm going to make the case that sustainability is the largest economic opportunity for the remainder of your lives and for your companies. And this isn't just a hippie pitch, even though I do listen to the Grateful Dead and I love fish food ice cream. Take it from Chamath, John Doerr at Kleiner Perkins, other investors and futurists. The world's first trillionaire will be made in climate change. The reason is that sustainability and climate change are a fundamentally unlimited market. It will touch all 8 billion people on the planet and 10 billion people by the year 2050. Yet nobody knows what to do about it, particularly corporations, because nobody has faced this type of predicament before. So companies large and small are going to hire management consultants and spend billions of dollars on technology and strategy. Or we can build the infrastructure here and develop our own thought leadership at Polkadot, and they'll buy it from us. As a quick agenda point, today in New York, I'm going to set the stage for this economic opportunity and what's at stake for Polkadot. Then tomorrow in Berlin, along with another team, I'm going to introduce a proposal that is a first step for the Polkadot and Kusama networks to take to develop its own leadership within sustainability innovation in Web3. A little bit about me. I used to work in TradFi. Sorry. Then I worked at AngelList and Venture Capital for a decade. And I got into crypto in 2018. I'm trustworthy. Let's keep going. So a bit of a backdrop to set the stage. What's carbon got to do with all this? This graph is a time series of the last 800,000 years. It demonstrates how atmospheric carbon dioxide drives surface temperature on the Earth as a dependent variable. The bottom line is temperature at a variance of about 8 degrees Celsius from peak to trough, about 15 to 17 degrees Fahrenheit. The top graph is the concentration of carbon dioxide molecules part per million molecules of air. Even without knowing the labels on this graph, observe the 2 lines. When one peaks, the other peaks. When one falls, so does the next. The relationship is unambiguous and unmistakable. Now let's zoom in on the carbon dioxide line. This is not the hockey stick graph that we were looking for. And if you're a crypto trader or a day trader, can you see where the resistance line was broken? I will frame this graph differently than you might have heard in the past. This is the graph of life. All life on Earth for the last million years, from algae to humans, evolved to optimize to pass on its genetic material within a range of 200 to 280 carbon dioxide parts per million. Last year, we crossed 416 parts per million, an increase of 66% over the mean of the last 800,000 years. If you have sons or daughters, nephews or nieces who you love and want to see become grandparents one day, then this graph must reverse. We must turn this around and do it immediately. The reason for the urgency is that scientists and simulated models suggest that within the next 10 years, around 2030, Natural phenomenon and feedback loops in the environment could trigger these irreversible upward spirals of global warming. Two examples: albedo is the effect of polar ice reflecting solar radiation into space. It plays a critical role in cooling the Earth. Yet as more ice melts, more and more solar radiation hits the Earth, warming the ground and the oceans beneath polar ice, causing more ice to melt, resulting in warmer seas, less ice, warmer seas, so on and so forth. A far more terrifying feedback loop is frozen methane within permafrost. Throughout Canada and Siberia are massive troves of frozen organic matter beneath the surface. Yet as the ground thaws, that permafrost, that organic matter, begins to break down, releasing methane into the atmosphere. Methane has 26 times the global warming effect as carbon dioxide. There are fields in Canada and Siberia with giant sinkholes in the ground spewing methane into the environment. Once this feedback loop starts, we have no response for it. It's a game over scenario for humanity. And I'm going to come back to that in a moment. Climate change. We're thinking about solving climate change all wrong in two different ways. Number one, we need to be removing carbon dioxide from the air. Carbon neutrality and net zero are important and commendable, but there's already carbon dioxide in the air. The math of climate change is simple. Climate models tell us that by 2030, in 7.5 years, we need to be removing 22 billion tons of carbon dioxide from the air every year. Last year, we emitted 36 billion tons of carbon dioxide. That's a full trip of nearly 60 billion tons. Remember that methane that's stored in frozen permafrost? Estimates are that there is stored, that 1,400 billion tons of methane is stored within the regions of Canada and Siberia. 22, 36, 1,400. That's why that scenario is game-ending, unless we do something radical and immediate now. The second reason why we're thinking about this all wrong, we need to think at a completely different scale. Analysts estimate that we're operating at a financial deficit of $50 trillion to deploy the type of radical technology and infrastructure necessary to meet the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals by 2030 and then 2050. We need to be thinking at a scale of trillions. Millions and billions are good and they're commendable, and I definitely applaud those initiatives. But if we want to stave off climate change, then we need to be hunting the big game, and the big game starts with the letter T. The good news, if you're a builder, an investor, or an entrepreneur in any industry, especially crypto, that market size dwarfs the entire market of crypto. It's 1,000x the size of DeFi and 50x the entire size of all the market caps of crypto. There is ample and abundant opportunity to build products that make tremendous amounts of money and make a difference within sustainability. All right, now I'm going to give you the solution. All behavior change first starts with a shift in mindset. We need to flip the switch from the idea that we're fucked and we can't do anything about this idea to we can fix it. Turn the negative into the positive. That's why Bitgreen's mission is to facilitate $1 trillion into carbon and green financing over the next decade. That's an absurd total for a new company that hasn't even launched yet. But if we want to hunt the big game, we need to think at that scale. It also focuses our team on only the biggest and the largest ideas. Asymmetric venture returns, right? That's the game that we're after. So what we've done, we've developed a parachain. We'll be participating in an auction later this year. Pay attention. The reason why we went for a parachain is so that we could craft an application-specific chain that is specifically imbued with our values and uses the governance as well as the tokenomics to motivate and incentivize the type of real-world behavior that we intend to bridge into. That's sustainable behavior. And then what we've also done, we've developed a few different apps that are kind of like starter apps just to get the ecosystem rolling. Those include a technical framework for onboarding and financing tokenized carbon credit projects, as well as a compliant debt market for green financing, and then in 2023, a few tools for philanthropy and NGOs. Carbon credits are obviously playing a major role within crypto, as well as in the global conservation effort. Is it a big market? Hell yeah. The voluntary market crossed $1 billion last year, growing at about 100% per year, forecast to be $30 billion by 2030. That's a 30x growth multiple within 10 years. Now, the European regulated market is remarkably larger. It crossed 683 billion euros last year. And you can see one of the reasons here is that the price graph for European carbon futures from 2019 to 2022 accelerated from $20 per metric ton to $84 earlier this year. It's now at about $73. Why? Number one, a supply glut of high-quality carbon projects. Number two, global corporations and countries have set fixed emissions targets, which ratchet up each year, increasing demand at the same time that the supply glut is keeping supply at a reasonably stable place. Also, nature is naturally scarce. And as we consume it, it's becoming more and more scarce. What's the purpose of carbon credits? Number one, well, what's the purpose of carbon credits? Chiefly, it is, number one, to finance carbon removal technology. Number two, to finance conservation and carbon avoidance programs. Most of those conservation and avoidance programs are capital that is supposed to be channeled to local communities. Many of those are indigenous groups who live on delicate land and conserve that land as part of their heritage and their economy. So the money that you spend when you offset a flight is supposed to go directly to these communities to build schools, roads, hospitals, and other infrastructure to economically empower these groups so that they don't feel the pressure to sell their land to palm oil companies or illegal loggers to monetize the natural resources. Yet, carbon credits are an imperfect industry, and it's still evolving. Currently, the lead-in time to start a new project is 18 to 24 months. This is an old carbon credit who died waiting for the bank to show up, unfortunately. And there are other issues like efficiency, non-transparency. It's a broker and OTC market, which means that middlemen are taking 10 to 30 cents on every dollar spent, and therefore far too little capital is actually flowing back to those communities who we want to empower. The great thing about this slide, these are all problems that blockchain was born to resolve. Bitgreen is going to be initiating carbon-forward contracts to provide catalytic capital to start high-quality carbon project development, introducing and delivering upfront capital in return for the future rights to purchase issued carbon credits. We're also going to have a marketplace that has kind of a GoFundMe or Kickstarter aesthetic, introducing the project details, legal documents, other information for investors to do their own research, such as the UN Sustainable Development Goals that each project addresses, rich media, and most importantly, we're going to try to capture the human stories and essence behind these programs and help communicate that to a global audience. One of the incredible projects that we're working on now is with an indigenous group in northern Peru. They have title to a vast area of Amazonian rainforest that is constantly under threat from illegal loggers, miners, and palm oil plantations. We're helping to finance a legal process for them to establish title to their lands and issue credits on the carbon and biodiversity that's being conserved on their land. Complementing our carbon credits marketplace will be a compliant framework for issuing digital green securities. Our initial targets focus on renewable energy, microfinance, infrastructure such as EV charging stations and energy retrofits, the critical infrastructure to modernize our global infrastructure. We're focused on two areas in which we'll be addressing. The first, access to capital for good projects, as well as discovery of high-quality projects by investors who want to deploy money. And second, secondary market liquidity. Another use case and an amazing project that we're working on now, we're working and collaborating with a consortium of family offices to help finance a $100 million renewable energy facility in sub-Saharan Africa, a country where 75% of the population lives without electricity. Many of those people burn wood for fuel to use for cooking and cook stoves, as well as for light. Now, this is a really hard project, a really hard one. It's the very definition of impact. This is the type of project that changes lives and changes a society. Now for the grand finale. Why Polkadot? Why Bitgreen? Why choose this layer 1 as our home ecosystem? We've already established that sustainability and climate change are unlimited in their market size. Yet, those are complex markets, and they're interconnected. It's going to take a village, an entire network to prevail. A smart contracts platform itself just won't be able to muster and capitalize on the market opportunity with the same tenacity that the Polkadot and Kusama ecosystems are capable of. We have application-specific parachains, secure interchain messaging systems, nominal gas fees, decentralized and scalable and secure scalability, as well as proof of stake as our native consensus method. We have the community. We have the talent. We need the will and the focus to tackle this problem. Now I want to finish with a quick story to tie all of this up and share with you where this vision can take all of us. And it's a little bit of a game. Who knows this house? It's a famous house. Who knows this tree? It's a famous tree. Anyone? It was in the courtyard of the house. Okay, last clue. Now does anybody know this house? The tree is famous because from this window and this position, the girl who lived in this attic could crouch down and gaze up at the sky and the tops of the branches and the leaves. It was her only view to the outside world for the 2 years that she lived in this attic. The freedom and the natural beauty of the sky and the tree that she observed was the contrast to the freedom that she could not enjoy in her life. You may have guessed, this is the tree that Anne Frank writes about in her diary. In April, I was in Amsterdam speaking at the Amsterdam conference, and one night I took a stroll over to the Anne Frank house. You can tell I was moved. The house still stands as a museum, but the tree is long gone. A few years ago, curators at the museum noticed that the tree was dying. They had a brilliant idea. They gathered all of the tree's seeds, sprouted them, and then nurtured them into saplings, and then sent those saplings all over the world as emissaries of her message of peace and hope. And you can see them here in Seattle at the Space Needle, London, Iowa, of all places. There's Bill Clinton, Yad Vashem. 80 years has passed since 1940. And with time, we can see the errors in our thinking then. Today we face new challenges, no less daunting. Yet we in this room and our friends in Berlin and throughout the Polkadot ecosystem and throughout the entire blockchain space are a specialized group of people with a unique skill set to accelerate the future, collectively working on a technology that was established by Satoshi as a response and to resist the forces of censorship, authoritarianism, and centralized power. Just as Anne's saplings continue to carry her message of peace, the technology that we built here today on our chains will long outlive us and will journey far from our hometowns. So I ask you to join this journey with Bitgreen. We exist to help facilitate your entry into this market to develop innovative technology that's not only going to save the world, but also is a lucrative opportunity. Help us to use this decentralized and distributed technology to carry seeds of freedom, empowerment, decentralization, peace, tolerance, and economic opportunity for people and planet everywhere, even those who don't yet exist yet, but whose future relies on the activities and focus and commitment that we make here today. This is the graph of life, and I don't know if we can reverse it. Nobody does. But I do know three things. One, Bitgreen is going to give it hell. Two, we can't plant these saplings alone. We need your help, and we exist to help you operate in these markets. This is a worthy cause for the Polkadot ecosystem to embrace and decide that it wants to be the leader in sustainability innovation in Web3. All it takes is you. Contact us. Number three, the world's first trillionaire will be made in climate change. Thank you so much. Contact us. We'd love to hear you. And I'll see you in Berlin.